Are you currently trying to learn French through Duolingo or other language learning apps and you're not progressing with your French? You feel like you're stuck and you're not moving towards achieving those French goals that you want to achieve so badly. Now in this video, I'm going to explain to you why using those apps is a waste of your time and what other things you can do to make sure that your French goals are achieved. Now firstly, who am I? If you're new to the channel, quick introduction. My name's Rory, so I'm from Melbourne, Australia, 23 years old, and I successfully learnt French to fluency in 1 year, and that was all by myself, so no teacher, no school, no parents who spoke French, and that was off the back of having failed to learn French at university and also private tutoring, and then even at high school, primary school, from ages 5 to 18, not succeeding in learning a second language, which was Italian and Japanese. And after my failures there with the school system and the traditional learning system where we're taught grammar and, weird sentences out of context and, where you're not really engaged and pushed to learn a second language through your passions, right? And, move to speaking as soon as, is logical. I thought, hey, I'm just going to learn, by myself. And, looking back, I made an excellent decision because it was no wonder that 99%, of all school students, all of my mates who went to school and everyone else I know who tried learning a second language at school failed, and only say 1% succeeded. Well, I went out after, being in that 99% and learnt French to fluency by myself. And now here on this channel and on Instagram as well, I help you. If you're a motivated French learner, okay, and you want to achieve your French goals and you just don't know how, or you're currently trying and you're not seeing that success, I help you achieve that French success. So in this video, we're going to talk about Duolingo and language learning apps. So let's get right into it. So the first thing is, why are Duolingo and the language learning apps like Babbel and other ones that you've surely heard about, why do they not work, right? Why do they have also a low success rate, just like the school system does with second language learning? It's simply because I've tried out these apps and it's simply that you've got sentences that'll pop up, okay? Sentences, fill in the blanks where you'll punch in 1 or 2 words, or the words will be jumbled up and you'll create sentences. And that's a good exercise. That's positive. However, the problem is, and this is the key problem with these language learning apps and why they don't work, it's simply that there's no context, there's no story, there's no conversation, there's no structure, there's no joining of phrases, and there's no flow. Imagine this, me and you, we both need to learn about how the engine of a car works, for example, okay? And at the end of, some training, right, we're going to see who knows how a car engine works better. And what you're going to do is, you're going to be given 10 random sentences that don't flow and aren't in aren't in a conversation, or don't have any melody or linking, or they're not told in the story. And they're going to be 10 random sentences about different parts of the car. And what I'm going to be given is a 10-sentence quick tutorial from a mechanic, right? So you're going to read 10 sentences out of a mechanic's book that have no correlation, no direct correlation, where sentence 1 joins to 2 and then 3 and then all the way through to 10, so it's coherent and it makes sense. Whereas me, I'm going to have sentence 1 flowing all the way through to 2, 3, 4 and all the way to 10. And I'm going to have a mini story that's in my head, right? Now, when it comes to seeing who's going to know more about the engine of a car and how that works, I'm going to beat you every time. And it's simply because for your learning, there's no flow, right? There's no context. When your brain refers back to those words, looking to call on that knowledge. Sentence 1's over there, 2's over there, 3's over there, 4's over there. But for me, it's all mixed together, right? It's all put together. And what that means is my brain goes to the same spot, to pick up on that knowledge, to pick out pieces of knowledge that I need. And it's the same thing with French. So if we relate it to learning French, it's just like you learn 10 random sentences, okay? And I learn a 10-sentence story, right? Think about, back to when you were a kid, right? Why, when we were teaching kids, English, when I was taught English, when you were taught English, when your siblings, your mother, your father were taught English, or any other language, how were they taught? Through a story, right? Through hearing lots of conversations with the family members, right? At dinners and lunches, okay, when the family comes around, and also stories. So read bedtime stories. Now that's for a reason. Every kid was read bedtime stories. It's simply because when there's a story, there's linking, right? There's words that cross over. They're mixed together coherently. So then when we refer back to certain words that we used in that story, we can just fill in the blanks. And that's the power of learning through a story, through context, right? If you think to, your favorite story, okay? If I was to pick one, The Hungry Caterpillar. I'm not sure if you know the book, but I like The Hungry Caterpillar, okay? I was a fan. I read it too much. I think it annoyed my parents, but, I like to think I turned out okay. So the reading was good. The Hungry Caterpillar, I don't remember every page, but I do remember that the caterpillar was eating through fruit. Now, I couldn't name you all the fruits, but because I know on each page there was a new fruit, or there were a few fruits. We had an apple, we would have had an orange, we would have had a pineapple, perhaps even a peach. I know that there were fruits there. I don't have to know each fruit. But you see there, I haven't read The Hungry Caterpillar in, 2 days. No, I'm kidding. 15 years. Probably 15 years, even longer. I'm 23, so, probably, 15 years, so, 7 last time I read it, or even before then. It might have been 5 or something. But I'm able to call on, the knowledge there. I'm able to remember the words that I learnt in that book. And it's the same thing with your French. So when you're learning, make sure you focus on stories. Let's focus on conversation, okay? You have to have that context, because when you do, you're making your life so much easier, right? Because you don't need to stress every word, because in a story, if you remember only 20% of the words, that's okay, because if you do 10 stories, now you've got, 20% of 10 stories. And if you've got, 10 sentences per story, well, now you've got 20 words, right? But if you're learning sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3, sentence 4, and they're all separate, then if you miss out on one word in one sentence, you could just forget that whole sentence, because you don't have the 1 to 10 where, if you can pick out 1 or 2 sentences, then you're able to remember the others. No, if they're all separate, it's much harder to remember. So me personally, right, how did I learn French, you're wondering? Now, very simple. In my first YouTube video, I explained it in a bit more detail than I'll just touch on here, but it was simply through a book. It's called Assimil with Ease, and it goes from beginner lessons all the way up to intermediate, semi-beginner, and you essentially got, 100 of them, and you got passages, conversations, stories. And one side of the page you got French, other side you have English, direct translation for each line item, and they simply increase in difficulty. Now, you're listening as you're reading the French, and then you take your earphones out, your earbuds out, and then you read the English, and you're just translating back to the French. Now, you do that, right, 2 lessons a day, you do that for a month. You go back to lesson 1, right? Because after you've done it for a month, if you're doing 2 lessons a day, you're looking at 60 lessons done, right? You go back to lesson 1, you will understand that lesson without even looking at the English. And it's simply because you have used conversations. You have learned through context, through stories. And another thing as well, with the upgrading of the stories every single lesson, they get more and more difficult progressively, slightly more difficult every lesson. They just creep up. It means that the vocabulary becomes more advanced, the sentences become a bit longer, and you're also reusing the vocabulary that you studied a week ago, 2 weeks ago. You know, a word that you saw yesterday, you see it again today when you study the new lesson. And that's the way to do it as well, because then you're not just referring back to that word like you would with, say, DUOLINGO or Babbel, where, oh, I saw that word before, that's it. No, you saw that word in a story before, right? So now we're back on the hungry caterpillar. In that book, you have all those fruits. I don't remember them all, but I remember some, and I can guess what the others are. So when I see a certain word, you know, a certain fruit, right, written in the following chapter, I think back and I go, I think I already saw that. And even if you didn't, you're already halfway there, because when you have the brain that switches on and goes, oh, I think I've seen that before, that's awesome. Because when you get to that point, you flick back to that lesson you were just on where you saw the word, and bang, now you've got 2 different sentences, 2 different stories where you're able to cross over the use of the word, and now you've got 2 uses for that word. That's in your brain, and if you repeat that, you know, as you move up in the lessons, which it did with this textbook, then you're going to see real progress, because it's impossible not to progress, right? When you have words that are used in a language in different contexts, in different stories, with interesting stories as well, this textbook is very interesting, you're going to progress. There's no other way about it. Now, for you personally, right, if you're a motivated French learner, you want to achieve your French goals, here's something for you. If you want to truly succeed, right, have that French success, you need to first identify what you're doing. Ask yourself, is it exactly what I need to be doing to achieve my French goals? Now, if you're using Duolingo or Babbel, other language learning apps, I don't think you are. I don't think you are doing everything you can to succeed in your French. And I don't say that to be mean, right? I want to help, because I used to be there. A few years ago, you know, I had no success in learning a second language. I thought it was impossible. I thought, oh, you know, because I'm, 20 years old now, because school's already gone, because my parents, didn't teach me a second language from birth, I can't succeed. There's no way. I can't do it. I'll never be able to speak French. But I went out and I developed my own method to learning French. Okay, I scoured the internet, sorted through, the good and the bad, and then determined what worked for me, because for each person it's slightly different, but the principles remain the same. Now, the second thing you need to do is, if you're using Duolingo or language learning apps, if you're studying grammar, see my second video for my take on grammar. You can probably guess it from this grin, hey? You need to identify that, okay, at the moment, I'm doing things that are negative for my language learning, okay? And that includes language learning apps, grammar, not dedicating time daily to studying French, and not committing yourself to French, okay? Not making a significant and dedicated time commitment to learning French, social, emotional commitment to learning French, and financial commitment to learning French. I touch on these 3 commitments. I explain them in my first video on my YouTube channel, and those are the 3 pillars, of commitment, I like to call them, to my French success, that I credit, where I am today with my French. Now, the third thing you need to do is know that there is a way that you can succeed in learning French. And there is a way that you can accomplish your French goals, okay? Now, I'm going to assist you with that, okay? If you're serious about achieving these goals, you can follow the blueprint that I used, the roadmap I used to achieve my French goals, simply because I learnt French from English, just like you're going to. Now, I'm different to the French teachers and tutors who 99% of them are French native speakers. These French teachers and tutors, very nice people, right? But the fact is 99% of their students failed to learn French in their classes. When it's 99%, it's not the student's fault. When it's 10%, okay, we had some stupid kids in there, right? Stupid students. They weren't trying their best. They were playing around. Okay, they were playing games, playing Tetris at the back of the class. But it's 99%. It's the teacher. It's the learning method. Now, I believe one of the problems and one of the reasons for the fact that only 1% succeed, imagine that, 1%. You have a 1% chance of learning French before you start the class. Right, that's crazy to think about. I believe one of the reasons why it's 99% that fail is simply that those French teachers, they haven't taken the path that their students need to achieve their French success, to achieve their French goals, to get to French fluency, simply because they never learned French from English. They just had the French, right? They already had it. And that's the problem, right? There's no relatability there. There's no similar obstacles that the teacher had to overcome that the students do as well. Now, I'm like you, right? I learnt English from a very young age. It's the one language I speak along with French now. And I had to learn French from English, just like you have to. I know where the pitfalls are. I know the difficult things that you do encounter when you're trying to learn French for the first time. And I know what to focus on, what to do to achieve French success. Now, the fourth and final thing you have to do is simply commit and execute a plan. Okay, so in terms of this plan, people might have trouble knowing what this looks like. I'll quickly touch on it, but it's got to involve laying out exactly where you are today, where you want to be in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now, and how you're going to get there. Those three things, what you need to be able to lay out a roadmap to your French success. Now, this roadmap may be difficult to plan out if you don't know that you're going to arrive at a destination. Now, the destination you arrive at, it may be different to the one that you planned on, ending up at before you started, but that's okay. And in terms of planning out this roadmap, I help people one-on-one, right? So I offer one-on-one, work with all of you motivated French learners who really want to make strong progress with your French, not waste time, get straight into it, and finally succeed with your French. And there's a link in the description where you can book a one-on-one call with me so I can help you out. And we can just have a quick chat, no commitments, and talk about your French goals and see if I'm able to help you. Now, have an awesome day, and I look forward to speaking with lots of you.